Okay, so let's talk about Australia. Picture a continent that's so harsh, so sunburnt, that most of it is just uninhabitable desert. Now, imagine that same place is a global financial juggernaut, one of the wealthiest nations on Earth per person. For almost 30 years, it did something no other developed country could. It completely avoided a recession. And believe me, this wasn't just a fluke, it's a system.
So yeah, that really brings us to the big question here, doesn't it? How did a former penal colony, parked way out at the edge of the world, turn itself into a global ATM? How does the nation with a population smaller than Texas consistently land in the top 3 for median wealth, beating out countries like the US, Germany, and the UK?
Well, the answer isn't that they built the next big tech company or some manufacturing empire. Nope. The real story of Australia's incredible wealth is the story of mastering 4 powerful and deeply connected economic cheat codes. And it all starts with what's literally right under their feet.
And that brings us to our first pillar, which is the bedrock of the entire Australian economy. Literally. You see, the national identity wasn't forged on some grand ideal of invention or entrepreneurship. It was forged on a much simpler, much more powerful idea. If you hit a rock with a shovel, you just might get rich.
You can trace this economic DNA all the way back to 1851. The Victorian gold rush was so massive that a single Australian colony produced a third of the entire world's gold. It turned Melbourne into one of the richest cities on the planet and taught Australia a lesson that would define it for centuries. You don't need to outthink the world if you can just outdig it. And that set the stage for the modern boom, which was of course fueled by China's incredible rise. And that modern boom is on a scale that is just hard to wrap your head around. This number you're looking at, $138 billion. That was the projected value of Australia's iron ore exports for just one financial year. It's an economic force field, a giant shock absorber that let the country sail right through the 2008 financial crisis while pretty much the rest of the world was burning.
But you know, this total reliance on digging stuff out of the ground has a really dark side. For decades, leaders like former Prime Minister Paul Keating have been warning that being this dependent on commodities is a trap. It's the path to becoming a banana republic that doesn't actually make anything of real value.
And this isn't just some political talking point, it's a textbook economic problem. It's called Dutch disease. So here's how it works. The whole world wants your resources, which makes your currency super strong. Now that sounds great, right? Good for going on vacation. But it's a death sentence for your other industries. Your cars, your electronics, your manufactured goods, they all suddenly become way too expensive for anyone else to buy. You get rich selling rocks, and you go broke trying to sell anything else. And this perfectly explains how Australia, a country built on iron ore, made it economically impossible to build its own cars at home. Okay, so if digging things up is cheat code number 1, what do you do with all that cash? Well, in Australia, you pour it into the second great pillar of the economy, a supercharged, speculative housing market that basically plays by its own set of rules. Just get a load of that number. 10 trillion Australian dollars. That is the total value of all residential property in the country. That's about 4 times the country's entire annual GDP. This isn't just a market, it's the nation's balance sheet. It's a national obsession. And for millions of people, it's their primary source of wealth.
So how did it get so gigantic? It's thanks to this really peculiar and powerful policy called negative gearing. Okay, so in most places in the world, losing money on an investment is, bad. But in Australian real estate, the government actually subsidizes your losses. You can literally deduct any shortfall from your regular salary, which lowers your income tax. This completely flips investment logic on its head. It encourages you to borrow big and bet on future price rises, not on whether the investment actually makes money today.
And what this did was create a ferocious feedback loop. The tax breaks pull in investors, which shoves prices way up. Then, regular people have to take on these enormous debts just to get a foot in the door. The banks, seeing prices go up and up, are more than happy to lend more and more money. And this cycle has just been repeating itself for 30 years, driving household debt to be among the highest in the entire developed world.
But to keep these two massive machines, resources and housing, running, you need a constant supply of fuel. And in this economic model, that fuel is growth. And that brings us to our third pillar, where we're going to see how Australia engineered a system of hidden engines that keep the economy expanding even when it doesn't really feel that way for the average person.
Okay, here's the trick. You can grow the size of your economy just by adding more people. Think about the economy like a pizza. If you keep inviting more people to the dinner party, you need a bigger and bigger pizza just so everyone gets the same size slice.
Australia has run one of the world's most aggressive immigration programs, and that guarantees the headline GDP number goes up, even if GDP per person, your actual individual slice of the pie, is barely growing at all.
And the most profitable version of this whole system is international education. I mean, look at this chart of Australia's top exports. You got iron ore, coal, natural gas, and then education. It seems kind of out of place, right? But Australia effectively sells university degrees as a direct pathway to residency. It's a pretty brilliant system that works as a revenue engine, a migration filter, and a population growth tool, all at the same time.
But there's another hidden engine, a financial fortress that underpins the entire system, and it's called superannuation. We are talking about a $3.9 trillion pool of compulsory retirement savings.
Right, so here's the crucial point. By law, a slice of every single worker's paycheck is automatically poured into this giant investment pool. All that money has to be invested somewhere, and that creates this permanent, structural demand for Australian assets. This constant torrent of cash acts like a powerful economic stabilizer. So when global markets panic and start selling everything, this system is a forced buyer, putting a floor under asset prices and preventing a total meltdown. It's a built-in shock absorber that keeps the whole machine from seizing up during a crisis.
And that brings us to the final pillar, and maybe the most controversial one. This is how Australia turned its greatest historical weakness, its crushing distance from everyone else, into its most powerful modern asset.
From a strategic point of view, especially for the United States, Australia is just invaluable real estate. It's stable, it's a Western ally, and it's a massive, defensible island perfectly positioned right on the edge of Asia. You know, military planners have a name for a place like this: an unsinkable aircraft carrier.
And this is exactly why that AUKUS submarine deal is so important. It's not really just about buying submarines for hundreds of billions of dollars. It's about buying a long-term, binding insurance policy with the world's most dominant military power. It's basically a subscription that guarantees security, technology transfer, and strategic importance in an increasingly fractured world.
So let's bring it all together. You've got a nation built on rocks, houses, population growth, and a powerful alliance. What's the final verdict on this totally unique economic model?
This one slide right here captures the great Australian paradox. It has the wealth of a top-tier developed nation, but the economic structure of a developing one. It ranks near the very top for wealth per person, but it's way down around 90th for economic complexity. And what that measures is how diverse and technologically sophisticated a country's exports are. In other words, Australia sells a lot of simple, valuable stuff, not a lot of complex, high-tech manufactured goods.
And that economic engine has some serious vulnerabilities. The whole commodity shield depends on China's endless appetite for steel. The housing market is propped up by some of the highest household debt in the world. And that population growth model is straining infrastructure and putting pressure on social cohesion. You could call these the cracks in the shield.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question. Is Australia's incredible prosperity a work of strategic genius, just cleverly playing the hand it was dealt? Or is it simply the lucky country, running a lucky streak that's about to face its toughest test yet? Because, you know, luck doesn't last forever, but it can last a very, very long time if you know exactly how to monetize it.